Hello Star Wars fans, and welcome to episode 36 of Journey into Legends. Today we are going to be talking about a series of one-shot comics about Boba Fett. I'm really excited to jump into these. It's been a few episodes since we've read any comics, and as big of a Boba Fett fan as I am, I'm really excited for some Boba Fett-centric content, so without further ado, let's read and review. Alright, so the first comic we have is called Bounty on Bar-Kooda, and basically in this comic, Gorga the Hutt falls in love with a female Hutt, and to win over her father, he hires Boba Fett to take down a pirate named Bar-Kooda that's been harassing him. This was a pretty fun one-shot comic. First off, Boba Fett's portrayal in here is great. He's very mysterious and badass, and his ruthless reputation follows him wherever he goes. Another thing I enjoyed about this issue was the inclusion of a magician named Wim Magwit, who teams up with Boba Fett to take down Bar-Kooda. His character just injected a bit of unexpected goofiness and lightheartedness into the storyline. As a villain, Bar-Kooda wasn't too remarkable. He's just your average pirate gangster sort of character, but he does have a really cool design. Overall, this wasn't amazing, but it was a decently fun issue and a good start. Let's move on to the next issue, which is called When the Fat Lady Swings. Alright, the next issue is called When the Fat Lady Swings, and it kind of continues the story of the last issue, with Gorga the Hutt's wife, Anakro, getting kidnapped by pirates. A new villain named Ry-Kooda, the older brother of Bar-Kooda, debuts in this comic, and I definitely prefer Ry-Kooda over Bar-Kooda, since Ry-Kooda brings a lot more physicality to the table, and is less of your stereotypical pirate sort of character. And again, these comics aren't masterpieces or anything, but these first two issues have been a lot of fun. Anyways, let's move on to the next issue, which is called Murder Most Foul. Alright, our next issue is called Murder Most Foul, and this one acts as a pseudo-finale to this first arc. In this one, Gorga the Hutt once again hires Boba Fett for a job, but this time, that job is to assassinate his father-in-law, Orko. Basically what happens is that Ry-Kooda from the last issue gets to Orko first and kills him, and the rest of the issue deals with Boba and Ry-Kooda's fight, and Gorga's wife having a baby Hutt. Overall, this one was fine. I liked seeing Ry-Kooda back for another round, and I liked the story being told in this issue. Overall, these first three issues were a lot of fun and were a great introduction to the series. Let's move on to the next issue, which is called Twin Engines of Destruction. Alright, so our next issue is called Twin Engines of Destruction, and in this one, a bounty hunter named Jodo Kast starts to impersonate Boba Fett, leading to a confrontation between the two. I really enjoyed this comic. First off, the story here was fantastic. The idea of a Boba Fett impersonator is really cool. I also really liked Dengar's inclusion in this, and some subtle nods to the Bounty Hunter Wars trilogy, which I haven't read yet, but I'm looking forward to that series. This is definitely my favorite of the Boba Fett comics so far. I think the story here was a lot more interesting, and there were some cool bits of continuity in here, like some references to the Marvel comics, the Tales books, and like I said, the Bounty Hunter Wars. Anyways, let's move on to the next comic, which is called Salvage. Alright, our next issue is called Salvage, and in this one, Boba Fett comes across a derelict cargo ship full of expensive cargo, but before he can commandeer the ship, he finds the ship's crew dead and infested with insects that burrow under your skin. Unfortunately, Boba Fett is forced to abandon the ship, and the issue ends. This one was fine. It wasn't great, it wasn't bad. It was extremely short, and the art was pretty good, but story-wise, it was a bit uneventful, and it's definitely skippable. Nonetheless, I still enjoyed it. Anyways, let's move on to the next comic. This time it's a 4-issue miniseries called Enemy of the Empire. Alright, next we have a 4-issue series called Enemy of the Empire, and this one basically tells the story of the first time Boba Fett ever worked for Darth Vader, and going into this one, I was really looking forward to it, but this one was just so disappointing. It barely even focused on Boba and Vader's partnership, and when it did, most of the time Vader was mischaracterized and their dynamic was just not what I was expecting. I knew that they fought in this series, and I did enjoy that part of the story, but everything else just felt so out of place, and most of the series focuses on this rogue Imperial named Abal-Karda, who's basically in possession of this living head of a queen who can predict the future. and this whole storyline was just so random and goofy and weird, and overall this series was such a disappointment, and other than Boba and Vader's fight, not very entertaining at all. Anyways, let's move on to the next issue, which is called Agent of Doom. Alright, this issue is called Agent of Doom, and in this one, Boba Fett is hired by an alien who survived Imperial imprisonment, and Fett is basically hunting down the Imperial Admiral who enslaved this alien species. Overall, this issue was just very uninteresting. There's nothing here really worth talking about. The story was underwhelming. Boba Fett's characterization is kind of weird here. He talks in almost half sentences. Of course, Boba Fett isn't much for talking, but in this comic he's speaking like a child, like if he got brain damage from the Sarlacc or something. I don't know what's up with that. Also, the art here is not very good, which surprised me because it was done by Cam Kennedy, who is usually fantastic, but the characters and the colors just weren't very interesting to look at. Overall, I wasn't a huge fan of this one. Anyways, let's move on to the next issue. This one is called Overkill. Alright, the next issue is called Overkill, and this one begins on the planet of Troska, where the local Imperials are feuding and fighting with the local government, run by the Kyber family. Now, Boba Fett is hired by a younger Imperial officer named Manek, who is going behind the back of his commanding officer to take matters into his own hands. And basically, Boba Fett goes in, takes care of the troublesome locals, gets paid, and this officer, Manek, gets promoted, and it basically ends with Boba Fett warning this officer that the more power he gets, the more enemies will come with that. So what did I think of this issue? I decently enjoyed it. It's one of the better Boba Fett comics so far, in my opinion. I thought the storyline was decent, and Boba Fett's characterization was good. My biggest issue with this comic was just the art. It wasn't very good, way too childish and stylized for my taste. But anyways, let's move on to the last issue we are going to be reading today. It's not officially a Boba Fett comic, but I'm going to include it as a bonus anyways. It's the 2013 Free Comic Book Day special titled The Assassination of Darth Vader. Alright, so just as I expected, this was more of a Darth Vader comic than it was a Boba Fett comic, so you're probably wondering, why did I even include it in this video? Well, it's quite simple. All of the comics I reviewed today I bought on eBay, and this comic was part of that order, so even though it doesn't really fit with the others, I decided to include it anyways. So what did I think of this issue? Well, this one was very short, but it was also very good as well. Basically, the captain of Vader's Star Destroyer attempts to assassinate Vader by launching him into space, and of course this doesn't work. Vader, with Boba Fett's help, destroys the TIE fighters that are deployed against them, and Vader reaches the bridge and kills the rogue captain. Again, this one was very short and very good as well. The action was great, the art was fantastic, and the Vader-Boba Fett dynamic was just perfect here, way better than it was in Enemy of the Empire. Overall, these comics were very hit or miss. Some of them were a lot of fun, while others felt like they were just made for the sake of it because slapping Boba Fett's name on anything is a sure way to make a lot of money. None of them really stand out as fantastic, but my favorites are Twin Engines of Destruction and the Assassination of Darth Vader. But anyways, that's all for today, so don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned for my next video where I'll be reviewing the X-Wing Rogue Squadron comic series. See ya.